You are about to journey against the current of contemporary thought and beyond the troubled waters of daily news to the very source of our extraordinary culture. You are going upstream with Cashel and Edge.
Well, here we are, back again with Cashel and Edge.
Hey,
Jack
Jack.
Cashel here, Loy Edge over there.
You got that right.
Yeah. And, we've been seeing a lot of distractions in the news lately.
We've talked about it a lot. We've gone from the benefit of the doubt to what's the angle.
Right. You always got to wonder, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes the angle isn't as there's different angles. It's not always follow the money, although that's often the angle.
Oh, yeah. You got, I call it the whole phenomenon, look squirrel.
Tell me about that. Explain that.
Well, it's like when you're walking your dog and all of a sudden they jerk the chain and they're running in another direction. They're running in another direction. Look, squirrel. Well, that's what they're trying to do with everybody as soon as, for different reasons,
right.
Like you said.
Yeah.
They might be trying to distract people from some unpleasant political issue. And
right.
They've got access to the media. They've got the control of the media, I should say.
Right.
So they need to go through their inventory and go, what do we got?
Right.
We got to get this off because there's a limited number of hours on that media platform
right.
that people will take in, and 95% of the people very perfunctorily will just zip through the click, click, click
right.
and get their media from, I don't know, maybe 2 hours of talking headlines and that kind of crap.
Right.
Well, they realize that if they can if they can monopolize that time with whatever this issue is that they're blowing up,
right.
that they can completely make that go away.
Right. They can
Didn't
make bad
exist.
stuff go away and make suppress good stuff from the other people. Give me an example of a distraction.
Well,
of a look squirrel distraction.
Okay. Well, there are many types. Political ones
right.
are very obvious. So you've got the political agenda, and that could be an ecological thing, which is, that's beautiful for them because it's like, they can make a spill
right.
into the worst disaster of dead little birds and people. It's terrible. And then you find out, well, it's all gone.
Right.
It was like they remediated it
like
in
there
2
was
months.
one tarball in Pensacola.
So they love doing that, and the other ones.
But of course, there's times when they suppress ecological disasters.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
right.
The last thing I want anybody to think is that I want befouled water and stuff, but obviously, that 90% of this stuff, you've just got to, they're hyping it. You've got media manufactured events completely.
Yeah.
And these are the ones that really, I made some notes of these, like Geraldo's safe with
the Al Capone safe.
Al Capone. Can you believe that America stopped in its tracks to watch this crap?
In fact, I was thinking about that earlier because I cannot think of an incident that drew more attention for less reality, and took years for Geraldo Rivera to live that down. He may never have lived it down. It was at a low point in his career.
Hopefully he doesn't.
But however, he was canned by ABC at the time for a good reason. He did a good thing, and that is, if you recall, the ABC did a story on the Kennedys that they suppressed at the last minute. And Geraldo left, in protest from a sweet gig at ABC, and then ended up migrating to the world of quasi-entertainment, TV news, and reclaimed his place in the sun with this story. You think, it's like in a trial. You don't introduce a bit of evidence that you don't know how it's going to play out. Well, you should have known what was in that vault in the first place before you get in there. You didn't. Obviously, it was authentic. And what was in there?
I watched it.
So did I.
Nothing. It was a bottle. It was an empty booze bottle. Let's see. a battle of the sexes. Do you remember one?
Bobby Riggs.
Bobby Riggs,
and
Billie Jean King, and Margaret Court. You remember he kicked Margaret Court's ass, and then Billie Jean was going to come save womanhood.
You know the backstory of that?
There's another backstory? What's that?
Bobby Riggs threw it. He had to throw the event. He was in deep with the Las Vegas gamblers.
Oh, is that right?
You know, it's just in a slight digression from that, because it came up recently with who got in trouble recently for it's been in the news lately about men competing in women's sports, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
quite a bit.
And the question came up about, I remember, I call it what it was now. There was a hearing not too long ago with Riley Gaines, who's a swimmer from Kentucky, who's been really outspoken champion of sanity in this. And some black, kind of lesbian-ish social rights activist who believe that men and women can compete. And she says at this hearing, she says that, well, there's a lot of men who think they could beat Serena Williams in tennis, but she could kick their butt. And then Riley Gaines says, well, sorry. I mean, she just had this at the top of her head. Both Serena Williams and Venus Williams played the 203rd best male tennis player, and they got their butts whipped by him, right? And then she says, in her own case, in my family, she's married, Riley Gaines. So there's one woman you can't pursue now. She goes, I was... Riley's out, right? The life with Riley canned, right before it even got going. She goes, I'm the one in my family with all the accolades. I'm the one in my family with all the trophies. My husband was a swimmer for the University of Kentucky also. And here's a quote, he can kick my butt any day, right? So, end of that story. In fact, Serena Williams said so herself. She was on with David Letterman, who didn't want to hear it.
Of course.
You know, she was saying, if I played Andy Murray, he'd beat me 6-0, 6-0 in 5 or 10 minutes. I'm not going to do that. I want to play against girls, you know. And
well, there you go. And so there was political.
Yeah, right.
Behind
but that was
that.
Pure theater distraction, right?
And then you remember, and sometimes they take events and they blow them way out and it can be political reasons. It could be for distractions. It could be any. But you remember how big a deal the Bobby Fischer-Boris Spassky thing was?
Sure. Gosh, that consumed our attention for months.
And who gives a shit about chess?
Right.
But that became a big international, and about them, and they were just a couple of oddballs.
And Bobby Fischer was an oddball.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a character. I mean, he's, like I think many chess champions, not completely sane, right?
Yep.
But you're right. It's hard to believe in retrospect that consumed our international attention for months on end.
And I'd like to go back and see why and what else was going on at the time, because usually you go back there and you go, oh, well, there was a little political intrigue going on at that time, and they wiped it off with this. But that takes a lot of work, a little more work than even I can
imagine
apply to Upstream with Cashel and Edge, which is a very worthy endeavor. But I only have so much
background time. Right, exactly, right. But you're doing a good job dredging up these incidents. I hadn't forgotten them, but they weren't top of mind for me.
Oh, you've always got you trapped miners,
the Chilean miners.
The Chilean miners.
Right.
What a drama.
I say Chilean, and you have to correct me on air with Chilean, right? You're so politically correct when it comes to things.
Well, you Newarked me.
You probably say
you Newarked me on the last one.
I did that, but you probably say Nicaragua when you talk about Nicaragua too.
Nicaragua,
right? Which was mandatory for a while on the TV.
Yeah, I still remember that cute girl we had here in town.
But there's Chilean
Maria Antonia.
Yeah, right. That's right.
It's like, so tonight in other news, I'm Maria Antonia.
Right.
It's like, wow, where'd that come from? It's authentic, though.
Today, not much is happening in France or Poland or Italy, but in Nicaragua,
yeah,
everything's up to date. There's Chilean miners were trapped, and this is the beauty of it for TV's sake, right? Because they were trapped for 60-something days, right? Life or death, don't know if they're going to survive. Usually people in some faraway country that don't speak your language, don't look like you don't really care about. Mm-hmm. I mean, if they had died,
Stuff happens, right?
Right. You read, I hate to
You're always reading about some tugboat capsizes with like 8,000 poor, pathetic people going from one asshole to another asshole, and you're like, that sounds really, really bad. Now, let's see, what was I going to have for breakfast?
Exactly. What Donald Trump would call shithole countries. Things happen, bad things happen all the time. But you're right. I mean, literally, you could read about a ferry capsizing in the Gulf of Aqaba, and 800 people died. Oh, sorry. I know you've been there. You probably
Aqaba.
You probably have Aquaban friends. And,
I do. Yeah.
Don't we all? I'm always a little jealous of you for that. But they and you don't care. I mean, you'd like to care. You'd like to feel bad about it. But you feel worse if there is a car overturned in Lenexa and 3 people are injured.
Yes.
There's some sort of calculus of pity.
That's right.
Fortunately, it's God. I mean, I think it's God's way of saving your mind, because if you
Of
had
course.
to feel horrible if you had to imagine the horrible deaths of these 800 struggling little kids and whatnot, you'd have a hard time ever getting to sleep at night. So there's a screen that's put up in your brain to prevent you from feeling too bad about things.
But that doesn't stop the media from harping on
No,
it.
because
regurgitating it over and over until you feel bad about not feeling bad.
That's right. And I'll tell you one example where, and I looked up the why of this story, and that is Malaysian Air 370. Remember this?
Is this the we too low?
Yeah.
Ding bang ow.
I think we talked a little bit about this before.
Yeah.
But
something wrong.
Something wrong. This was, I think it was maybe 2014. I had to check the date. But it was a plane going from, I guess, Jakarta to Beijing, and then it disappeared from the radar. Now, what was interesting about it, unlike other such plane crashes or disappearances, is how CNN milked it.
Milked it. Oh, I remember animation.
Right.
Here's what a plane would have looked like going over this part of the ocean, and then arrows, and everybody sitting there trying to figure out where some piece of steel fell in the ocean some 8 million miles,
And you run out of real information after about an hour.
Exactly.
So you have one night, for instance, about a week after this happened, maybe 6 days afterwards, I looked at the numbers of something like 371 air minutes that available to CNN that evening. 365 of them were dedicated to MH370. And you had like aviation geniuses like Don Lemon asking, this is literally true, asking an aviation expert, could it possibly have been sucked in by a black hole?
Of course.
And I think the guy said to him, I think you may be confusing with the Bermuda Triangle, right? Which is at least a conspiracy theory that is possibly relevant to this disappearance.
Okay, which is stupider? Don Lemon asking the question about the black hole.
Right.
Or the Congress dude saying that Guam was going to tip over. If people moved to one side of the island, it could capsize.
He worried openly. I guess it was at a congressional hearing. I just saw him last week because he was at that congressional hearing where they were interviewing John Durham. I said, what kind of question I got to ask him about? Right. Is it possible, Mr. Durham, that during the Russia collusion hoax that so many people were sitting on the third floor of the White House that had capsized? No, he said he worried about Marines being sent to Guam for fear that their added weight would cause the island to tip over. He said this with a straight face, and he's been reelected about 6 times since, which tells you something about Democrats in Congress. That should have been a disqualifier right there.
Oh.
But no, they went on with this MH370 for months. I mean, literally months.
Was there something going on?
Yes. And it wasn't politics. It was ratings. This is before Donald Trump. So Donald Trump became, Trump, look squirrel. I mean, that's who he became. He became their distraction of distractions.
Yeah.
But before that, they had actually, improvised. And Zucker, what's his name first? I forget his first name. Zucker?
Talking about NBC?
Yeah, no, the guy who ran CNN. He brought him. He's a new guy.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't know.
It doesn't matter, but he knows his first name, I presume. And they brought him in. He said, "This is it. We're going to run with this. We're going to run with it. We're going to run with it until we run it into the ground." And it was a big ratings boost for them. What are they talking about otherwise? Today in Washington, it was just a...
Wow, that really shows you how much the other crap is not interesting to people.
Yeah, that's right.
If they could watch a ridiculous thing about a missing plane over and over and over.
Well, and part of it, when you think about this, is that CNN at the time was still vaguely centrist. They were being flanked on the left by MSNBC and flanked on the right by Fox. So there was no, if they were trying not to put a political spin on, let's say, the Agricultural Committee met today, who cares?
Right.
So there was the ultimate distraction. It went on forever.
Well, they do that a lot. When there are genuine things that happen,
right,
they will take them and go, we need to milk this thing to about 5 times what it deserves.
Right.
Because we've got this reason, XYZ reason. And I think one of the ones that really personally kind of pissed me off, because I got sick of it, was when McCain died.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, now, from what I can remember, it was more than the Queen dying.
More than when Reagan died.
More than when Reagan.
But there was a motive for them.
There was a motive to keep dragging it out.
And that was because when McCain died, he was best known on their side, not as a 2008 presidential candidate that they thoroughly denigrated for however long the campaign lasted, but rather a critic of Donald Trump.
He was this guy.
Yeah, right.
Giving the thumbs down on the health care, on the, what was that?
I forget.
I can't remember exactly, but it wound up preserving the Obamacare bill.
Finally. But in 2008, he was just a Republican candidate with Sarah Palin as a running mate.
They hated him like everybody else.
Right, sure. But by this time, when he died, he was best known as a critic of Donald Trump. And for them, that was worth ratings gold. For now, CNN and MSNBC had turned fully partisan, and people were feeding on that. So which encouraged people at the funeral to really do very uncivil things and attack Donald Trump during the course of the funeral. Which reminds me of an even more political funeral was the Paul Wellstone funeral.
Oh, yeah, that was...
Which they turned into an orgy of anti-Republican hate.
Disgusting.
Yeah, and it cost them.
Yeah.
They went over the top with that one, and no one cared about Paul Wellstone anyhow, except Mrs. Wellstone, if there was one. Or the guy in the next stall at the Minneapolis airport, if that was the case. Oh, that was another senator. I'm sorry, I'm getting confused.
And it's important for people to remember, to understand this. At that Wellstone, you had some really bad people with really no class, evil intentions, no respect for decorum.
Right.
But what we all need to remember is the saving grace that we have is that they always overplay their hand.
And they cannot help themselves.
Because they don't know when they're overplaying their hand.
Right.
Because they don't have genuine human emotion. So they don't have the antenna up that goes, whoa, wait a minute. You're being a total asshole.
We saw that recently with the weekend coup or whatever in Russia.
Yes.
Now, and the guy who most distinguished himself at doing exactly what you're saying was Adam. Was it Adam Kinzinger, the Pelosi Republican who's no longer in the Congress, who was on a January 6th committee and stuff? Knowing nothing about what was going on, no one knew anything. It's best in those instances just to keep your mouth shut.
Mm-hmm.
If Don Lemon was still on the air, he might have said, is it possible that Putin fell into a black hole? Or if Hank Johnson was there, he could say, is it possible that, I don't know, the Wagner Group made the Russia tip over or whatever? But so Kinzinger's up there, and he's small-minded enough Now, people have died during this, and the whole fates of nations could change. We didn't know at the time. Actually, nothing kind of happened, but he didn't know that at the time. And he said, you know who this is going to hurt? This is a real blow to, you know who's a blow to? Forget Putin, forget
Joe
Zelensky, forget Biden, forget Trump. Tucker Carlson.
Wow.
This is going to hurt Tucker Carlson. He's been reciting Putin talking points all along, blah, blah, blah. Well, he hasn't been,
This guy's a nut.
right. But this is the way the media now, by the way, Kinzinger is now the senior political correspondent for CNN, right?
Of course.
And he was on the air filling time, just like they were fill time with MH370. They have to bring out people who don't know anything to talk, don't have the good sense to keep their mouths shut. I've done this show Coast to Coast many times, which is a late night show that deals with.
Started out with Nori.
Nori, no, even before Nori, there was Art Bell.
Art Bell,
right.
yeah. I used to actually listen to that.
Yeah. And it's sometimes they get into weird stuff, but sometimes they talk about plane crashes.
Sure, it's a good show.
And I know something about plane crashes.
It's very well done, yeah.
So they wanted,
I actually heard you on one of those.
And they asked me to come on and talk about MH370. And I said, I came on once, and I said, what you can be sure of, the only thing I can tell you can be sure of, is that you're not getting the truth. They're not telling you what you would want to know. They know more than they're telling you. Then they asked me to come on again. And I said, I already told you everything I know. I'm not going to go on the air for an hour and say nothing. I'm not going to talk about black holes. I can't do that. There are real plane crashes I know about, TWA Flight 800, the crash of Ron Brown's plane. But not this, because I don't know anything. By the way, they're re-releasing my TWA 800 book in paperback.
I heard
this
that.
month, which is good.
That's going to be cool.
That's fun to have two books out at the same time.
Never seen anything like that before. It's a different publisher, too.
Yeah, different publishers. So I have two books. I have my new book, Untenable, coming out with my paperback of TWA 800. And that story was the biggest news story of the year in 1996, and it would deserve to be.
Deserve to be.
Right.
Well, it deserves to be even bigger.
It deserves to be much bigger.
Much bigger, and it deserves to be big now.
Right, exactly. Here's a story that a plane crash that got buried. And I understand why they buried it. And I could almost sympathize with them.
JFK Jr.?
No, there's that. That got a lot of attention.
Yeah.
That was a distraction. And a good story. I mean, he's JFK Jr., okay? If you look like you or me, they wouldn't care. He's the JFK Jr. But I don't know if you remember this flight. 2 months after September 11th to the day, it was November 11th, plane takes off from JFK, bound for the Dominican Republic, and crashes in Rockaway, Queens, killing everyone on board.
Yes. I do. I only remember it because I have a friend in Rockaway that I called.
Right. And within, 8 hours, Colin Powell was on the scene assuring everyone that it was a malfunction, a mechanical problem. 2 months after 9/11, we as a nation could not afford a terrorist incident on an airplane. I imagine it was a shoe bomber or some kind of bomber. But we couldn't talk about it. And they just deep-sixed it, right?
Wow.
And no one wanted to know. Frankly, I didn't want to know. I was happy with that. It was bury this one. It would kill our aviation industry if that were true. It was just more than our natural ecosystem can handle.
But he could find the weapons of mass destruction, though.
Yeah, right. That was. I think he got duped. I don't think he.
Oh, he got duped.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
You know what? Sometimes these quirky little deals that would normally be a little blurb in the back of a science journal or some kind of crap. We've had a lot of this lately because they know that they can grab 5 days out of Asian murder hornets.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Or killer bees from Mexico.
Any kind of crazy crap they want to throw. They go, quick, get one out of. I got one in the closet. Hurry up. Biden's doing something bad. Get that killer bees out of there. Give me the hornet.
Give me some more Ebola, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
And then I saw one in L.A. when I was there in about, must have been 2008. But May Day, of course, is always an opportunity for some kind of showboating, some million-man something or other. Or
May 1.
May Day.
You mean
yeah.
the real literal May Day?
May 1.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm out there in L.A. I lived right off of Wilshire, and it's a weekend. I think it's a Saturday, and they've been hyping this Grassroots
Illegal immigration march.
Grassroots illegal immigration.
I was there when that
march.
happened.
You're kidding me.
No, I was there.
We were both there.
Yeah.
So you see tens of thousands of diminutive brown people with white T-shirts on, right?
Right.
And they're all marching quietly down. They don't know what they're marching for.
They're waving American flags.
They're waving. No, they were the first one. They were waving a lot of Salvadorian, and they got chewed out. And the
That's
next
right.
year
Right.
they wore
Yeah,
but they didn't have. But then when they got close to me, now I didn't know anything about this damn thing, but it was terminating right across the street from my apartment.
Yeah.
On Wilshire Boulevard at La Brea and Wilshire, which is a big intersection.
Right.
They had reserved this gigantic stage for the termination of this march of these proud, struggling people just trying to get their place in the sun here in this American economy. Well, as soon as they all gathered, and these people they're oblivious. They're just innocent, guileless, standing there. They got a little sign. They got a Coca-Cola or something, and they're kind of having it's a nice day.
Yeah.
Well, then it's time for the speechification to come on.
Right.
And it is African-American Marxists.
Right.
The ones who coordinated this whole deal.
And
the
whose
rats,
people will be most negatively impacted by illegal immigration.
Right. And they're the rats behind all this deal, right? So they get up. Now, they got all the TV cameras and all that stuff they wanted in advance. Oh, it's immigration. And then when these guys get up there, it's full-blown, full-throated Marxism.
Right.
And they're up there, and these are like faux Jamaican guys. These are just like the scammers that you've seen your whole life.
Right.
And I go back up to my apartment, and actually I pick up some posters that people have thrown around, and they are flat-out radical communist posters.
Sure, right.
And I kept them for a while. I think I got rid of them. I should have kept them because it was really something to be there. But then I'm back in my apartment, and I'm lying down, and it's later in the evening. It's time for that thing to wrap up because they had the permit till 7 or whatever. And then all of a sudden I hear this music, and it's very loud. Do, 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 night and day.
You are the one.
They're playing that orchestral version of Sinatra's Night and Day to chase everybody out. It was the damnedest thing.
That's a aversion therapy.
Yeah. So they played that song and everybody dispersed. But that whole thing was, it was such a setup,
Yeah, totally. And I had an odd involvement with that.
Tell me about it.
I was in L.A. at the time doing research for my book, What's the Matter with California? And I had some time, and I wanted to see that new cathedral.
That was an answer to the Thomas Frank thing? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yes, right.
Go ahead.
And I wanted to see What's the Matter with Kansas, and this was a rebuttal sort of book. And I wanted to see the new L.A. cathedral upon which they spent some ungodly amount of money, ungodly being a very specific word here.
Yes.
And it's a mess. It's just
it's awful, satanic.
And it costs like $10 for 20 minutes to park there. It's crazy. So I park underneath, and as I walk up, I see there's a person sitting at a table for people signing up for a press conference. And I, before I went up to the table, I saw a cameraman there, and the cameramen are usually good guys, The media people are, but the cameramen are good guys. I said, what's this about? He said, oh, it's about the illegal immigration march, right? So I said, okay. So I walk up to the thing and I said, hi, I'm here for the press conference. Who are you with? I said, oh, WorldNet Daily. I just did it like really casually. Oh, you're not on the list, but that's okay. You can go in. So I go up there and I'm saying, okay, I'm just an observer here. I'm writing a book. I'm not participating in this, but I couldn't help myself, right? So there was Cardinal Mahoney was supposed to be there, but he couldn't be. so they sent this Hispanic bishop out. And he's, going through the whole spiel, blah, 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 solid workers, blah, blah, blah. This is not about politics, not about this or that. And then I finally couldn't help myself. I said, Bishop, I said, how is it, like Catholics I've been talking to in California have been asking me how you could ally yourself with these people and to have a march like this. And the person next to you is a big abortion activist. How can you do that? He goes, oh, no, doesn't have to do with politics. I said, Bishop, it's May 1st. That's International Workers' Day on the communist calendar. And he looked at me, and I said it in that tone of voice. He looked at me like I just peed on his shoes. He was someone. I was waiting for someone to come yank me out of there. But you're right. It was May Day.
They are commies.
It was in your face.
Yes. And by the way, that Cardinal Mahoney.
Yeah.
I was down there showing my mom around that. This was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
And she was in there looking around, and I was sitting outside on a bench, and I looked up, and it was just Cardinal Mahoney right in front of me.
Right.
And you know how they wear those long robes and it looks like they're floating?
Right.
I looked up and made eye contact with him as he floated by me. And, people describe that cold wind and that chill.
Right, right.
And I felt it.
Like
I felt the presence of
something unholy.
Something unholy.
Yeah.
Maybe only happened to me twice in my life.
Yeah.
But that one really, really was profound.
I think that church is an extravagant waste of good Catholic money.
There's something really dark about that place.
Yeah. But getting back to something a little bit lighter, we're talking about distractions here. Tell me about the boy in the balloon. that
was the first one that came to my mind because it was. Now, that one captured all kinds of different imagination for different reasons.
Right.
They knew they had a winner.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we can ride this damn thing forever. Yeah. And, there was a scandal. The family was accused of maybe setting something up. People had that. Everybody, since they were a boy, wanted to know what it'd be like to float in a bubble. So everybody's wondering about that.
Just a little background for people who don't remember this. I think it was, I'm guessing 2010, thereabouts.
Yeah.
2009.
Yeah.
A boy, a balloon is up, at like 10,000, some high altitude balloon.
Higher than you want to be.
Right. And allegedly, a 6-year-old boy got trapped in it, and it went up with him in it, right?
Well, they didn't know where he went.
So unfortunately for CNN, this only lasted like 90 minutes. So you had 90 frantic minutes of news coverage. People, where's the balloon? Where's this boy coming? And then the balloon lands, right? And we don't know. It lands someplace obscure, and we don't know about it. And so, amazing story. The boy is rescued from the balloon, right? And then it turns out the boy was never in the balloon.
The boy wasn't in the balloon.
What a great scam!
The parents were kind of scammers. But oh man, that owned the airways. I'll tell you, it really did.
For 90, Don Lemon would have hoped that the boy could have stayed up there for 6 days until he was like, his skeleton came down and some ideally in some place close to a major broadcast studio, so they wouldn't have to go far to find the story. Another major distraction over time is true crime. And I'm not sure. I haven't.
You mean how they'll milk
some crimes get milked to death.
Mm-hmm.
Other crimes that you wouldn't expect get milked to death. And some crimes that should get milked to death get ignored.
Get ignored, yeah.
The mother of all milkings, of course, and we talked about this, I think, before, was O.J. Simpson. And
this is what they proudly refer to as the court of public opinion.
Court of public opinion.
What they really mean is the media megaphone.
Right.
What is it going to say?
And, when that happened, we didn't know it was political. Most people were pretty naive about it because O.J. was one of those racially transcendent people, and they had a great Q rating, and he did movies, did TV shows, great football player, very congenial. He's a Republican. and it got political. But we talked about this before, have we not, on the air?
Mm-hmm.
And all the side characters became like Cato Kalin and Ron Goldman, poor guy, wrong place, wrong time. But there's been since then any number of other stories, none of them quite at that level. Although I can think of one that is almost at that level.
What's that?
John Bonet.
Oh, yeah.
Without any kind of real political angle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that one, lots of shows, lots of speculation, oh, yeah, you're right.
There was John Bonet Ramsey, 6-year-old, who did little beauty pageants, kind of little obscene little things, but, I get it. And everyone knows the story. She's found Christmas Eve or day after Christmas, or Christmas Day, and she's found bound and gagged and killed in family's basement after. And then for months, years, still, I'll run into people. I have nieces who are still totally hooked on this. Uncle Jack, who do you think did it? I said, me. Well, and everyone had an opinion. We all had an opinion. What happened? Right? None of us knew. And then for years, I would say, I thought it was the brother. I think it was Burke, the deranged little brother. But then Burke shows up as a student in Purdue, my alma mater, and then I had to write him off, cross him off the suspect list, And then we're back to, the mom. I think the dad is pure innocent, although he obviously accomplice if it happened among the family members. Mom was a little deranged. She's since died. John Ramsey's still out there, looking for some sort of vindication. But I had an odd story about John Ramsey. I have a friend. When I go to Florida, I used to go to this one particular church, and I had some friends I met there. And one day they went out to dinner, and they introduced me to a friend of theirs who wanted to write a book. And I was interested. And I knew that they had a friend who wanted to write a book, and so we go out to lunch after church, and the guy introduces himself as John Ramsey, right? Mm-hmm. Now he's a pleasant-looking, middle-aged kind of guy, right? And I have no idea whether this is the real John Ramsey.
Right.
So I've got to ask a bunch of absurd questions to determine whether this John Ramsey is the John Ramsey, but it wasn't the John Ramsey. But it took me about 12 questions. It's like, what's my line? You keep asking questions to find out whether this guy is the. Oh, by the way, are you the guy whose daughter was killed in your house? No, it's kind of that's a little too blunt, So you got to work around.
He's not really being that considerate.
No,
he should say right off the bat.
Right. Hey, I'm not the John. But I'm not the John.
I mean, it's a giggle. It's a little laugh.
Right.
But it.
Yeah.
Lets people move on.
Right. My daughter's not named John Bonet. Okay, thanks. Good, clear. I didn't know, though. Maybe they presumed that I knew, but I knew that I knew what John Ramsey looked like. I didn't, or didn't know well enough to know this was a guy. I mean, he fit the general demographic. So, but that was a big one. That took years. Still go on. Still debate it,
The way they can concentrate it and eat up all the media space kind of becomes this de facto fog of war for these people.
Right.
It's mass confusion. They can add elements of complexity into everybody's media experience until the coast is clear.
Right.
Or until it's relatively clear.
Right.
You can see with how they talk about Ukraine and all that stuff. And all these little odd quirky little things they pull out of nowhere.
Like the sub, right?
Yes.
The Titanic sub.
That's right. That's a good one. And you and I, we talk about what's the angle. We're sitting there. I know damn well you're sitting there going, okay, I hear the first superficial story, but now I got to figure out who's behind all the angles and what are they trying to achieve.
And what agenda will be imposed on this story.
Yes.
From the left, they imposed the agenda it cost $250,000, right, to take a shot at looking at the Titanic. So the hard left's final narrative was these people deserved it. Mm-hmm. We had one on the right too, And that is that the guy, the CEO of this company, had famously gone on public saying, we don't want to hire 50-year-old white men to run these cruises. We want people who are younger and more diverse. Well, except that all the people doing the rescuing were 50-year-old white men.
Yeah.
And no one was looking for their DEI credentials when this was
And
going
that guy
on.
must have been, did he die in it too?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, well, he overplayed his hand there stupidly because you should never say anything like that. You're
Out loud.
asking for
Right,
it.
right, you are, yeah. Especially saying it out loud. Especially when you're doing something that has an element of risk in it.
Yes.
Like those celebrities who climb Mount Everest, right? And there's always that storyline. Like, what's her name? Pittman was the woman. Forget her first name. Jane Pittman, was it? Or is that an historic black abolitionist? One or the other. The names run together for me.
God, there's so many of them. I think I don't have my phone, but I could probably just pull up the headline, and there's probably another one right now.
No, and the trick is to put an agenda on it first and make that agenda work, right? A lot of times the left will come out with some agenda that blows up in their face within minutes. It happens so often to them.
They back right down.
Yeah.
It's like it just disappears.
They're like they didn't say that.
That's when they do the Homer Simpson backing into the bushes.
You know, in fact, when I did a story when that whole Russian coup thing happened, right? And so I wrote it on
The one a few days ago?
it was a couple of weeks ago now when you think about it.
Really?
Yeah, time flies
Wow.
when you're doing podcasts. I go online and I'm talking about Kinzinger. So I write the article on over the weekend, and I'm just talking about how they're trying to exploit a narrative to cover the fact that what's going on. And then I go in on Sunday night just to check my facts on the Kinzinger quote. And I go to Google. I put down Kinzinger, Tucker Carlson. I'm getting scrubbed. The whole thing was scrubbed. Google went that far to scrub. Then I put his whole quote in because I had the quote. I just wanted a link so I could link it. Nothing, right? And I forget how they said it is, something or something. But it was like they were already memory holing this stupid moment. They do that too, And so it's pretty common. One other story that sometimes you would think not all stories work the way they're expected to work.
Oh, boy, that's for sure.
And this one turned an election. And that was the story, and it's an incredible story. I got deeply involved in it myself, of the little boy found floating in an inner tube by two fishermen on Thanksgiving Day in the year 1999. Elian Gonzalez.
Oh.
Now, that should have just been a feel-good story, right? Wow, this is incredible. A little boy's found, is virtually everyone else in their little boat fleeing Castro's Cuba had drowned at sea, including his mother and his mother's live-in, or common-law husband. Little Elian floats into shore. They wave the usual landing thing. And usually if they capture you at sea, they send you back. But for a 6-year-old boy in an inner tube found by fishermen.
Well, I don't think they send you back if you're from Cuba.
No, if you're at sea, yes, they'll send you back. If you land, it's like 1 foot on land theory or something, even with Cuba. So they bring him in. His Miami family, extended family adopts him. They're thrilled with him. Stories, what a wonderful feel-good story. Wrap it up, time for Christmas. Everything's good. But then, and the politics of this are really complicated, but basically, this is going to sound bizarre, but the Clinton presidency had to pay their dues to Archer of Daniels Midland, which had a major project going on in Cuba. And Castro leaned on ADM to lean on Clinton, and which meant that they had to get the boy back, lest it seemed like a public relations coup for the Miamians, the generally Republican Miamians and Cuban Miamians. So that led to one of the most grotesque raids in recent memory. But before that happened, the one voice in the White House that was telling Clinton to back off was Al Gore. He's got an election coming up. Florida, the Miamians, the younger generation of Miamians had been drifting back to the center, right? And then all of a sudden they're getting yanked back into, old man politics here. And Gore is telling Clinton, let this go. Don't play with this. And then what did they do? And this is a semi-miracle of modern media. On Easter Saturday, Janet Reno sends in these stormtroopers, right, to take the boy out of the Miamians' home. A photo is captured and wins the Pulitzer Prize. There couldn't have been a close second of them holding a frightened Elian at gunpoint. Everyone's seen this photo. And then it's gone by lunch that day. By that afternoon, that photo is totally memory hold. And instead is the smiling Elian back in the arms of his father, who had a gun at his head virtually, to come over and take the boy back, right? What a saga. And then, but it has I was deeply into that. So I was doing Catholic radio at the time. I asked him to rent me like one of those, what do you call them? Those big buses that go to a place where you could do media, right? And because I wanted to report on this story live. And I was really upset when this happened. And I said, there's got to be, there's a God thing involved here. Found in the inner tube on Thanksgiving, taken out of his home on Easter Saturday. How is God's hand at work here? Well, we found out 8 months later, when George Bush beats Al Gore in Florida by a handful of votes. Had not been for the Elian story, Gore probably would have carried Florida easily.
Wow.
So there is sometimes karmic justice or divine justice when you mess with a great storyline. Don't mess with that storyline.
Wow, I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, I got into that pretty deeply. So give me last one good one if you got a good distraction story.
Well, let's see. What are good distraction stories? There was a guy about 25 years ago, and he had a really uncomfortable, unpleasant, embarrassing, frankly, even worse than that, story that he had to he had to announce it publicly.
Unburden himself.
He had to. And so he gets up in front of the microphone and he says, we seem to be unable to track down $2.3 trillion. It's missing from the Pentagon budget. But we're going to track that down, and we're going to find that money and track it down. And that he said that on September 10th, 2001.
Oh, my gosh.
His name was Rumsfeld.
Huh.
So I don't know how you're going to distract from that, but something happened.
Well, he wasn't the only happy person. Gary Condit, who was in the headlines every day for his alleged murder of Miss Chandra Levy, didn't murder her, by the way. It was done by a MS-13 guy. That story got Deep Six, too. But those are two very happy people on September 11th. Those are two stories that they didn't have to deal with anymore. Speaking of distractions.
Oh, I should say to people who didn't follow it that the part of the Pentagon that was destroyed, allegedly by an airplane, it had that part of the Pentagon where they were doing that research to get to the bottom of this thing, doggone it.
Well, that's one conspiracy theory I'm going to let you own by yourself, but we're going to wrap up here. Hey, Loy, thanks for being such a great sport. Jack Cashel here.
Thanks for being you, Jack.
2 books out, Untenable, new book of mine, The True Story of White Ethnic Flight from America Cities, and also out this month is the paperback version of TWA 800, speaking of distractions. We'll see you next week, next time, next podcast.
Ciao.